You're listening to the Getting Smart podcast. I'm Rebecca Middles, and welcome to the Innovation Road Trip podcast series. We're exploring how states are driving transformation through bold policies, grassroots coalitions, and cross sector partnerships. I've been thinking a lot about the connective tissue of educational change, those organizations that work as intermediaries to bridge policy and practice. We've talked with incredible leaders from foundations and member driven coalitions. And today we're with a repeat guest who's not just building an organization, but a movement. She's doing it through incredible partnerships in her home state of Nevada. I'm joined today by my friend and a fearless innovator, Jeanine Collins, co founder and chief impact officer of the Center for the Future of Learning. Welcome, Jeanine.
Thanks, Rebecca.
It feels like we've known each other forever. Your career trajectory has been so dynamic, a lifetime of leadership packed into just a handful of years. What I've always admired is that you don't default to a traditional route. You find the most effective path, bringing people along and building a movement. It's been an honor to witness. Can you bring our listeners into a bit of this wild journey, this wild trajectory?
I think this story probably begins as a graduate student at Bard College,
Mm.
which is where I earned my Master of Arts in Teaching History. I had an undergraduate degree in history, and I've had a lifetime as a young artist, musician, and dancer. And why I chose Bard's MAT program because I have an incredible mother who was a fantastic educator who fueled within me the belief
Love that.
that education was not just critically important, but could be a space of real transformation. And I wanted to find a program that I felt was seeking to cultivate within educators their ability to change the system. And so Bard for me was that place. It's a tiny little liberal arts college. It continues now, but it was the first year of their MAT program. And what I have noticed, Rebecca, is that I tend to show up where people are doing the things for the first time. And they called us their robust guinea pigs. And I feel like since then, I've just been doing a lot of, I've been creating experiences for robust guinea pigs because things aren't perfect when you start, but there's a lot of passion, there's a lot of dreaming, there's a lot of iteration. And that experience at Bard gave me the foundation to be an action researcher, something I often say a researching practitioner. And also, though I completed my master's in history, made me realize that I actually wanted to be a dance teacher because that is where I think I felt that I could pull both the academic knowledge and ideas that I was grappling with into a unique space of self-expression and exploration and creativity. And I really saw the lack of constraints in an elective classroom, which I felt was like what I needed to be able to be the kind of teacher or systems pusher that I wanted to be. And so I actually came back to my home state of Nevada. I taught in the Clark County School District for 13 years as a dance educator with young high school students, really trying to create experiences and relationships and environments where young people were really challenged to develop a way of seeing, a point of view in the world, and that dance could be the intersection of who they were as a human and in their bodies, but also with their minds and what they were learning in school. And so we had so much fun together. I loved it. I think we created a lot of great art together and we learned a lot about creative process. And I kind of somewhere along towards the end of my teaching career, I was feeling just that there was a larger impact I was hoping to make. And I just didn't feel like the classroom was going to be the place for it, and stepped out and did some reflecting and had the opportunity to step back in closer to when I met you. And I found myself as the executive director of a small education policy nonprofit in Nevada called Nevada Succeeds. And at the time I stepped into that organization, they had incredible relationships with leaders across the state. And they were exploring what might be important to do next to really move Nevada forward, learning from high performing systems research. And we brought a little bit of design thinking magic to that conversation. And then we had the challenge of the pandemic. And all of that mixed together brought our organization to actually partner with your organization at that time to explore really innovative learning that was happening across the world in Singapore and across the United States.
That was
And
amazing time.
it was so fun. And through
Yeah,
that
highs and lows.
yeah, well, and through that process, we brought educators together from across our state in a space of learning, and we brought
Mhm.
systems leaders. At the time, our state superintendent, Joan Eper, and many others across different layers of the system together to say what is happening, what is possible. And, we saw something that felt so simple, but was kind of like at the cutting edge of the trend, which was the country we were studying, Singapore, innovative systems we were looking at were really redefining success in a broader way. And we thought that made educators in our work thought it made so much sense. It's long overdue. And our state superintendent and the state of Nevada said, let's go after building a portrait of a learner. Let's really talk with our community about what these mindsets and skills need to be. And let's think about what we need to do to reorient our system so that we're actually creating the enabling conditions for young people to become collaborators through the way they're engaging in math, to become critical thinkers because of the way they're unpacking ideas in their science classrooms, and that learning is alive and visible and relevant and exciting. And gosh, that's sent me on the trajectory ever since. We've been doing partnership work with the state, partners with national organizations that have supported competency-based learning approaches and learner-centered, just the really broader umbrella of learner-centered systems redesign. And we did that work together inside an organization called Ed Extraordinary, which sat inside Teach for America Nevada. And they were an incredible, they housed the work and created the support system so that we could do this great work across our community and our state. And then just this past year, I want to say actually almost a year ago to the date, our team spun out of what became an extraordinary into the Center for the Future of Learning to really focus full time on this vision of creating a future that is full of possibility when it comes to learning, and to really help shepherd the relationships with community in policy and in practice that are necessary to be able to advance what we haven't built yet and what we're building on.
I'm hearing a couple of things. I'm hearing how important the performance learning piece that you started at, but also strongly believe in, has really shown up in a unique way. I think as a leader, you keep that front and center. You're also sharing that, you've been in a couple of different roles for intermediary work at a state level. And I feel like all of those pieces stacked together have really led you to some unique ways that you've navigated that. And so I hope that surfaces as we continue talking more about this, because I do want to circle back that the dance that you and Andy and others did on your team
Oh,
with
yeah.
students for that, it was one of those experiences that I'll never forget. Can you talk a little bit about that? That was very powerful. And I know it's available online somewhere where people could watch it, or I think it's on
Yeah.
YouTube somewhere.
Okay, so fast forward, we're the team at Extraordinary that now became the Center for the Future of Learning team. We've helped build this statewide process to vision a portrait of a Nevada learner. And then very quickly after that, in October, we kind of wrapped that piece of the work in June of 2023. And then in October, we launched the Nevada Future of Learning Network. And that you're talking about, yes, Andy on my team, who shares very similar values around co-design and co-production. We went and we worked with a group of dancers at one of the schools here locally and just really did a series of engagements with them to unpack what the vision of the portrait was, to help them find their own physicalizations of these ideas, and then to create movement. And we strung it together into a story that really looked at what school has felt like and has been and what it could feel like and become.
Mhm.
And the arts are just so powerful because they just cut, especially, I think dance is so powerful because it's so human, it's
Yes.
so visceral, and the feeling is valid in a way that sometimes I think the way that we show up in talking about schools and thinking about learning can feel a little like the feeling part doesn't matter as much as the head
Mhm.
part does. But you
And
know,
Tutti.
yeah, and yes, 2D, right? And I just feel like the head and heart and
Yes.
all of it goes together. We're all these like whole human beings, and the arts just make that real. And so, yeah, these young people did such an incredible job showcasing that story through their own choreography, we helped shape it. And it was the entry, everybody to get into the network launch had to go through, they were welcomed into the space and they watched this dance and they were opened up into like a kind of like a, what would you call that? It was like a carnival, a
Immersive.
carnival.
It was
Yeah.
immersive, it was interactive. I mean, you actually the dancers pulled people who were listening in. I mean, the metaphor of the whole experience, I was unlike anything I've seen. I've been in this work since the late '90s, just to give away my age, but to be able to experience that and see that and have that run by students for people coming in to learn more about the work you're doing, I'll never forget it. And I encourage people to find that, and we'll put a link in the show notes if we can.
Well, I love it because this work really is about empowering people, learners, to, have these meaningful interactive experiences that build connection, that help them make sense of what they're learning, and I think ultimately help people see how they can contribute to make a difference in their communities. And so if you can feel that, then you just cut through the talking of like, are we really going to do this? And it's like, hi is here. So we try to figure out ways to show up in that experience, whether they're in small conversations or in large events like you saw.
Okay. So let's circle back to the Center for the Future of Learning, where you are now. And like you said, it's been an evolution and you have a lot of
Yeah.
team members. There's a commitment there about building, as I'm hearing you talk, building a movement through collective power.
Yeah.
Can you share a story about how bringing diverse groups together, like educators, do a really great job with young people and community leaders, business leaders, led to an unexpected solution or a breakthrough partnership that maybe you weren't expecting, but were part of the process? That way I know.
Yeah. I think that this past summer, one of the things that I'm really excited about, my colleagues, Andy and Sean, led an experience with our youth. They're called Futurescapers. So they're really creating the landscape of the future with their dreaming and their actions. And that experience was really about bringing them together to envision things that the values that they have around what school can be, how they can have different kinds of learning relationships, experiences, and environments that build off the things that are fueling to them, but also like how do we start to scale those things and create systems that actually ensure that that's accessible to all kids and all families. And one of the activities that they did was produce an almanac for the future of learning. And it's so great, right? When you create some prompts and create some collaboration and bring in some incredible designers. And I love, well, we got to put this in the notes so people
We
can
will.
see
We have
that.
to. I'm just
The
making a note
almanac is
myself.
just this beautiful, they talked to community members throughout this process as part of their learning, but and they really engaged each other and their perspectives to create something that really pushes our thinking on, what does a school day feel like? What are the kinds of experiences they might be able to have all over the world in a day because of how they learn? And I just think that when we create the space to dream a little bit and not just to respond to the current state of affairs, we can get to some pretty bold ideas really quickly. And I think that that's why I think we value young people so much. We have some incredible young people that are continuing to be on our team as our youth innovation associates. And they, I think, continue to bring their expertise, their perspective, and that sense of possibility at a moment in their lives where they're really trying to figure out what comes next and what do they do. And I think that's we've got to stay alive in that tension with the work we're doing, because sometimes we're doing this work for years and years and years, but it's for young people to transition into that point where they're going to keep learning and building forever. And so how are we taking that school experience and really making sure that we're pushing on what that can be for this moment and for the next moment? And that almanac is something I'm so proud of that everyone created together and is fun and funny, and I think all the things that we believe the future can be.
I agree. You're expressing, I think, the culture of the organization that you lead too, not just the young people. Like I think that permeates throughout your organization. So that leads me to ask you a question about organizations' values, not personal agendas, which I think you've done a great job with. How do you keep that the driving force behind partnerships you build? Maybe another way of saying that is what does being ego free in this work really mean to you? What are ways that as people are listening, they can be thinking about that, particularly in reference to the roles that intermediaries play? We are we're in a field that has a lot of competition right now for funding. And
Sure.
how do you keep values of your org at the center in this landscape?
You know, I think that one of the things that's great about the folks on our team is that I think we're really design thinkers and human-centered design thinkers
Mm,
at heart. And so what does that mean to us? I think that as we are human-centered design thinkers, we place a really high priority on context first and foremost. And I think that it's so when we think about the context, we're not thinking about ourselves. We're
mm,
thinking about the community, and we're thinking about the diversity of the community, and we're thinking about those who are least served by the way things are currently operating.
mhm.
And I think because we're rooted in a constant state of empathy, quite frankly, it just keeps everything very clear. And because we're not more concerned about doing a thing than solving the problem or redefining the problem in a way that is going to make it, solutions oriented,
Mhm.
I think that we're just also in a state of like constantly questioning. And so that leads to, right, our constant analysis and wondering and thinking and sensing that maybe this isn't landing for people the way we thought it was. Maybe it's because, is it the words? Is that what's happening? We just are in those conversations so often, and I think the work is so adaptive as a result of that. And
Mhm.
I think that it then also feels authentic to people. So
Mhm.
if we're talking about our portrait of a learner, which is now, is it 2.5 years old now
Pretty
since
amazing. We'll also put that in the show notes. Keep going.
right? I think it's great. I love that a young person from our community sketched it out as a result of community conversations. I love that there's these questions on it. And systems go through leadership changes and new folks, and it's not like we did it and it's done. So I don't think there's ever this definition of like, oh, we're done. I think there's an infinite mindset on the work that keeps us out of ego as well. And so when we're noticing new leaders coming in and we're noticing schools that maybe haven't jumped into the work yet, it's like, oh, is it not accessible? Or how do we need to talk about this differently? Or does it feel like all the things you should be doing anyway? Oh, okay. What does that mean? And how do we help talk about that? And what is happening right now? So
Mhm.
I think it's just like there's no one way to like meet everybody. I think it's so steeped in the response of the like where people are that we're just kind of moving based off of that. Yes, we have goals. Yes, we have strategies to employ those goals, but like we're really loose on how we do it to make sure that it's just responding to the questions that our community constantly has.
What I'm hearing you talk about is the tightness around values and purpose, but an
Yes.
openness, the kind of that tight, loose idea, but that openness to be responsive because you've been in spaces where there are a lot of others also doing similar work, and you've been able to really build collective action by being, I think, value driven, ego free, in service of the work in a way that is noteworthy. You're going to continue to do that. You are now in the new organization. So I was just thinking about all those people that are, we have some that are falling off in this world of competition with funding, drying up in this competitive world. And we have some people who are merging. We have different organizations working together. And I've just seen you navigate that in a really thoughtful way.
No, I'll say our perspective is that we are always excited to partner with folks who bring expertise and ideas and value to a conversation that we don't have. It's not really about us. I think we see ourselves as sort of the convener and the folks who can draw from the best of what's around and the best of who's around to make something better. And one of our goals is to work with the best and brightest and smartest people so that we get better along the way.
Yeah. And I think that that is what I hope people are hearing too, because a local grassroots state run intermediary of people who live there, who will be living there past these initiatives, who will reap the benefits of this work, navigating that path, bringing in people from outside of the state if they want, but like
Totally.
recognizing how that impacts and really being the voice, I think, of that state piece. That's what we're, I think, capturing as we're going through some of these interviews with foundation led work,
Yeah.
member driven coalition work. There's a common theme of just having people who live there, kids are in the school there, grew up there, just having that kind of commitment, that natural filtering, if you will, of like, what does this look like 5 years from now. I appreciate that bias toward action, that can-do attitude that you said the students have, I think you have, the organization has, and how you've used that to navigate this work. Let's think about the big idea and dreams that you were talking about. What are ones that in your experience, a big dream that came to fruition in reality, which was really exciting? Maybe one that if you want to, you can decide if you want to share one from the past, one you're on the cusp of, or one that you're focused on for the future. But what is something that you're really excited about, whether it's come to fruition or whether you're hoping it will in the now near future that you're
One of the reasons I was so excited to embark on this work of helping build a state vision for the future of learning was the part that comes after it, which
Mm,
is and a network to bring it to life or to realize that vision. And I think that in my own learning experiences as an educator, I found being in spaces with others where we could really unpack what was our learning, look and analyze student work, ask deep questions, challenge our assumptions, be open to shifting the way that we saw things, and like bringing down those barriers of isolation and building community were so powerful. I came to that work as a critical friends group coach. And if I'm really honest, that's probably right after I talked about Bard College. That experience of becoming a CFG coach probably was the thing
mm,
that gave me the tools to show up and scaffold questions that change the way we think, create spaces that are inspiring and possibility filled. And so I think that the network it is building. There are the kinds of things that the folks in White Pine County are doing in
mm,
Northern Nevada right now
right.
with their vision of a portrait, which by the way is also anchored in questions now. The White Pine County portrait of it, they call it portrait of a leader. And the way that they have developed their learning continuum of skills aligned to that portrait, their learning model with such clarity around what those learning experiences are going to sound like and feel like, both for teachers and students. And the work that they're doing to start to badge those competencies and to showcase them with portfolios, that's all work that was not underway when our work was starting. And bravo to the folks at White Pine, but they have come through this. They are leading, they are starting to connect. I was just up in Douglas County yesterday, and those incredible leaders have been doing learner centered work for over 6 years.
Mm,
And their learning model is so beautiful and clear. And everybody is hungry to learn and connect with each other in more deep ways to advance. And, it's so exciting. The state superintendent that led this work is now the Clark County School District Superintendent, Joan Ebert.
yeah.
And they are really leaning in right now as she's new there with this year of like learning, discovering, exploring what does a portrait actually mean to us. And I just think there's such power in this like emergent space of people building models of things that I think are just the best ideas we can come up with
Mm,
that are empowering, that young people have a sense of agency, and we can see it and they can start sharing with each other. This is why this worked. This is why this didn't work. This is what like that is the learning process, and it is fun. And that is the thing that I knew I wanted to help build that. And just like this work, it's adaptive. You're not doing the same thing every year in a network because the challenges that people in the work are facing are shifting as they're advancing. And so being able to, I think, really see where people are at. We're in the process of that,
mm,
and one-on-ones with our sister superintendents over the past month, and starting to
awesome.
think about how they're collaborating and connecting around issues that are important to them and how that dovetails with all of these things. It's just such great, rich spaces of learning.
Mm.
And to me, whether it's just a conversation in a room or it's the public exhibition where we're all learning from each other, like that's all the layers of the work that I think are just so fun.
I love that you surface stories from the field and
Right.
highlighted examples. It's so wonderful to always put the practitioners who are doing this important work day to day at the center of the storytelling as well. And I also appreciate the coherence piece you talked about with systems change. I heard the why, I heard the what, I heard the how of the learning model, I heard about the for whom with the credentialing, which we believe to be really important for coherent systems change and just the energy around it. Thank you so much. Your work that you're doing with your org and the teams that you have that you're partnering with, they illustrate how intermediary organizations can drive change at a state level. You're not just building solutions. You've shared that, but you're also building a movement through powerful partnerships. Thank you for sharing your story and for being a part of this series.
Thanks for tuning in to the Getting Smart podcast today. We want this podcast to be actionable, insightful, and a great way to learn about what's next in learning. In order to stay on the cutting edge, we need people in the field to tell us what they're hearing, what they're wanting, and what they're needing to learn more about. Got a topic or a guest in mind? Send your recommendations to me, Mason at gettingsmart.com. And if you like what you're hearing, don't forget to leave a review in Apple Podcasts or subscribe wherever you listen. Feel free to share the podcast on social media using the hashtag GSPodcasts. Thanks so much.